Welcome all to another episode of the Deductionist podcast in our relatively new but pretty much the same setup as before. I'm working on it. All right, I'm working on it. There is a new setup coming. I just have to figure out the logistics of it. Hope you're all keeping well and lovely and awesome. Welcome to board. Welcome to Mr. Jane and everybody else that's watching and joining in through the ether of the internet, I guess. How's your week's been? I hope it's been a glorious one, an educated one, full of lots of takeaways. I'm starting to sound like a primary school teacher of sorts here at this stage. So let's get straight into it, right? The Monographs version 2, the Kickstarter is fabulously taken off at the moment, thanks to you wonderful human beings. So thank you very much for that. Although somewhat annoyingly for my need to make things even, last time I checked, we were at 48 followers. So if we could get to 50 on that, or even just drop it down to 45. I'd be I'd be able to be okay with that. It's like, when you're turning up the volume on the TV, it's got to be at like 10 or 15 or 20 or 35 this way. So it has actually gone live for pre-sale, for pre-order on the MX Publishing website. So if you were to go over to it at the moment, you would be able to find this particular page right here. Let me just move me out of the way. There we go. Put me right down there. So if you go over to mxpublishing.com, you'll be able to find a pre-sale order for the book right now. If it is that's something that you're super keen to get involved in, that's right there for you to be able to do. Suffice it to say, if you're keen on following the Kickstarter as well, then that will also be going live very soon indeed. There are a few little things that we need to get sorted in terms of the proofing. I've had the first proofs back today, and there's some spacing issues that I just need to solve. So once they're done, then we can start to roll it out from there, and we will be good to go, and you guys can get this in your hands as fast as you possibly can. I think a Discord server would fit this new format very well. Cool. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is or what that entails doing. Somebody would need to explain it to me or do it for me. Whichever whichever comes first in that scenario. Cool. I was there was a group that I used to go to. God, that makes it sound like I was in therapy of sorts, which is nothing wrong with. Just that wasn't the type of group it was. Um, where there was talk of setting up a Discord server for the people to. Julie knows as well. Discord is the way. Cool. Somebody tell me what it is then, because I have no idea. Je ne sais pas. Um, uh, 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 what was I talking about? Oh, that's an old man moment. Yes, the previous Discord group of discussion that was being spoken about from the group of guys that I sometimes connect with, they were discussing setting up this server to to figure it all out and stay in touch during the time between the meetings, and so we could all be working on whatever it was that we were working on at this particular time. I was like, yeah, great, let's do it. All of these positives sound awesome. I have no idea what Discord is. I mean, I know it's a social media thing of sorts, but other than that, clueless. Captain Clueless. I think I've even joined one or two Discord servers before, but in terms of having this run through that, I wouldn't know where to start. Don't know what that is or how to do it. So if somebody can tell me, absolutely, um, absolutely. Discord is a messaging platform where you can have text conversation, voice calls. It's like somewhere you can create forums, but a bit more modern. Cool. I mean, if you're happy to do that, board, let me know. You know, I can always join in with the fun that way around. But in terms of setting it up, I, I wouldn't even know where to start with that kind of thing. So that's the updates for you that I have in terms of the monographs. In that way, let's move on to the discussion that was on the cards in terms of problem solving. Eh, So, and it's something that we've spoken about a good number of times. Right? It's something that the the topics that we look at revolve around an element of this uh, every single time. You can't get away from it. And whether we're looking at certain critical thinking aspects, or whether we're applying one of the options, be it deduction, induction, abduction, whatever it is that way around. Those are all the specificities of techniques. It is a little like if you were to walk up to a martial arts class and they'd just be saying, "Well, what do you do?" You go, "Oh, you just punch him in the face." Okay, but how? What's the mindset that we use to facilitate that kind of change? How do we keep doing this, right? And now this is the kind of line drawing in the sand that I have to do with this kind of material, because there are ways that we can do it where it would revolve around hammering a single technique to make sure that you've got it before we can move on. But that would mean that each one of these podcast episodes would be about a week and a half long, and that's not really conducive for the sake of time, focus, attention, energy, health, mental health, physical health, all of that kind of thing. It doesn't really it doesn't really help with the activation of that. So let's look at it in terms of how to think with these particular problems. Not necessarily how, in terms of whether I'm just applying deductive reasoning or I'm asking questions through this kind of retrograde analysis, or what. Not that kind of how. This the personal approach that one would take to solving these types of situations, these types of problems, and with it, all problems can be tackled. Every last one of them, every last one of them. And there is an element that's popped up time and again through a phrase that I love, in that emotional qualities are antagonistic to clear reasoning, right? And that's not mine. Though I say it that often, people seem to think that it is my phrase. It's not. It's Conan Doyle's. It's Sherlock Holmes's. That was their gift to the world, and through it, it's very often misunderstood. Right? It's very often misunderstood in that, well, we just need to control our emotions and be a cold, hard reasoner. It's not the case, right? The kind of analogy that I've taken with it is, whereas the emotional qualities are antagonistic to clear reasoning, but the qualities of emotion are not. Right? Emotional in that particular context would be defined by the letting go. And in that letting go, you are letting go of reason, right? Because you're leaning too far into modes of thinking that are inherently without reason. Right? Can you explain why you laugh at some jokes and not others? Well, because you found it funny. Cool. Right? That's how you reason and rationalize it. But some people punish others for not finding them funny. Some people punish others for finding it funny. Right? And this is the whole kind of debate that you can very often get into when it comes to, the concept of emotional qualities being antagonistic to clear reasoning. And that, out of the dark recesses of the internet comment sections, there's this kind of buzzword phrase that's popped out, that's been given its own stigma from the kinds of people that say it, in that facts don't care about your feelings in that way, right? That as a sentiment, uh, it, it makes sense in its own little world, right? But if we're talking about problem solving specifically, a fact has to understand a feeling in order for it to be a fact. And I'm saying specific situations here, because, like, when you think about it, take that analogy of jokes again. There are some comedians that I laugh, full belly laugh at, that others get massively offended by. Does that mean that I'm right and they're wrong, or they're right and I'm wrong? No. It just means that I find that funny and they don't. That is the fact in that moment that doesn't care about the feeling, right? The fact is, I find it funny. The fact is, other people don't, right? When that starts to become out of control, as people using it as a platform to gain other assessments somewhat incoherently, in that way, right? Because this is where the whole critical thinking angle comes in. So the idiosyncratic way that we could get towards this, and I'm very I'm very now conscious of the fact that I'm stemming towards some kind of flow state discussion around this, because I with this being a podcast format, I'm still keeping the theme alive, in that we have topics that we are going to discuss and the applications of them therein. But other than that, there's no real planning. There's no notes. I'm just talking to you about what's in here, and it's coming out with no gateway. The reasoning through a particular situation, whatever it is, to me, is a little like that ancient computer game. Was it Pong? With the two little paddles that had happened the other side of the screen, and they are just continually bouncing a ball back from one another, right? And it just keeps going. It just keeps going. It just keeps going. There's more questions to ask, more information to see. And the only time that stops is when you get to a solution to a particular problem that fits every facet of what it is that's happening in that moment, right? The amount of times that somebody says to you, "Oh, I don't care," right? I would initially take time to say, "Well, that's not true. You are wrong." Right? In that moment, one could argue that I am trying to do the fact not caring about your feelings, but I have to understand their feelings in that moment. This is what I'm talking about, the qualities of emotion in that way. I would have to understand why they believe that they don't care. Because to not care would mean that it just doesn't matter to you. It's not a thing that you focus on that has any kind of emotional relevance whatsoever. It is just a thing that passes by. Somebody, a stranger in the street that you don't even notice, that is not caring. To talk about the frustration, or the joy, or any other kind of emotive concept that you want to bring to it, and then finish with, "Oh, I don't care anyway." You do. Otherwise, you wouldn't have brought it up, right? The amount of people that will say things like, um, well, in a job role environment, yeah, I don't have any faith in this system that we have. Yet there is continual inquiry into people and things and elements that are composite parts of it. Well, you do. because otherwise, if you didn't have any faith, you'd wash your hands of it and go away and do something else. The continual asking of questions to get towards that dichotomy of emotional qualities or the qualities of emotion. And with that, you can solve pretty much any problem. Pretty much any problem. And I'm saying pretty much because I obviously aren't aware of all of the problems that exist. But so let's ask an AI service. What are the most common problems that face human beings? And if you've got any problems in the chat that you want to make an example of this discussion, let's do it. Pop them in the chat as well. I'm starting to feel like a little bit like Vanilla Ice. If you've got a problem, yo, I'll solve it. Check out my hook while the DJ revolves it. And so they've AI's brought it back on an individual level and a societal level. So from the individual level, we've got mental health, physical health, relationships, financial insecurity, and a lack of purpose or meaning. And at a societal level, we've got poverty and inequality, conflict and violence, climate change, discrimination and injustice, and access to education and healthcare. We've, Mr. Jane, we've covered riddles a ton of times. I'm talking about like a human concern, something that you would have to apply um, a little investigative practice to, because it has real fallout and it has real stakes. However big or small that they might be, if it is that you get to a point where you can't solve a riddle, you just go, I don't, because I obsess about those things. But a human would be well that within their rights to go, oh well, I didn't solve it, or I can't solve it, and move on. But within those moments, those are just like within that example that just fell out of my face. There's reasons to be had there to gain more understanding. Look at the two different viewpoints of saying, "Oh, I didn't solve it," or "Oh, I can't solve it." There's information to be asked there, right? You didn't solve it. That's a solution to the problem of taking a riddle on at that particular moment. Somebody saying, "I can't solve it." We have an outcome. Can you not solve it, or have you just given up? Why did you give up? What made you give up in those moments? How did the tackle of this riddle make you feel when approaching the intellectual information? Was it just that you didn't have enough information to bring to it, or it made you feel thick and then it stressed you out because you were right? You answer all of these things that pop up, right? And you have a better recourse to deal with them. So as you guys from the chat um, have a think about that area as well. I'll take one of these that is. It sounds on the surface like a particularly big topic, right? It sounds like a particularly big topic. A lack of purpose or meaning. Many people struggle to find purpose or meaning in their lives, leading to feelings of emptiness and dissatisfaction. Right? You can look at that right away at the start and think, okay, how do I find meaning? How would you answer that question? Meaning is to find meaning would be derived by a search, finding. Yeah, to find a meaning. To be given a meaning is something else altogether. But to find it, to discover it, is detailed by exploration in those moments. So those initial moments, you can look at the person to go, is it just that you don't have any meaning, or are you not looking? Right. And then if the person says like, well, I've got this job that's going on, and it's in a lot of time in my day, and the commute, and my landlord might kick us out at any minute, and a lot of things facing people in England at the moment, and you say that's fine. So it's not that you are without meaning, it's just that you are being given purposes that have a higher priority at that particular time. So the search for meaning can still go on. Because if you think about it, it connects back to, that dumb self-help property. But what I've asked people in those moments is like, okay, cool. Let me give you an example from somebody that I've asked similar questions to. It wasn't about meaning, but this was more about the aspect of time when I was talking to this other person about it. But the concepts remain the same. In that, I said to this person, "So how long's your shifts?" And they're about 10 to 12 hours. Differs because of the nature of the work. So between 10 to 12 hours. Fine. So let's put that at a maximum and say 12 hours. That's 12 more hours that are left within the day. Cool. How much of that do you spend sleeping? Right, because of commutes and all sorts. They guessed on average between 6 and 7. That's fine. Let's say 7. That leaves 5 hours in that moment. What are you doing with those 5 hours? And when it got down to it, the more you pushed, the more you hammered those stories that they tell themselves, which are like a little cocoon of comfort that people wrap themselves in, however validly that might be. And for most people, they believe themselves to be valid. But when you're getting this kind of Pong level approach towards reasoning, you just keep pushing, you just keep asking questions, right? When it got down to it, it was just that they didn't feel motivated at that way. And there you go, there's another problem. So when was the last time that you felt motivated? Well, it was when this and this, and it presented other options that they could do it, which gave them the energy to find meaning. So it's not that they didn't have meaning. The answer to that problem was that they didn't have the energy to look. And when you get towards that, it is about taking a refreshingly honest perspective to look at things, to look at all of these emotional qualities of a situation. Just push them over to the side just for a moment, and let's look at the nuts and bolts of something else. Right? Um, Board says, let me put the comment on the screen as well. I don't know. The most common thing I can think is problems in relationship, like thinking that your partner is cheating on you or something. It's pretty common, pretty common problem that pops up. So, what's the first thing that people normally do in that scenario? They talk to someone else. Normally, right? You talk to your friends about what they think is going on, and the other spouse will talk to their friends about what they think is going on. First port of call is getting the two people in the relationship to talk to one another, right? The fact that this person, I don't know, didn't want to. I'll give you one from my life. An ex of mine didn't want me to go out with her and her friends because I don't like dancing. It's not something that I like to do. That's something that they like to do in that moment. So me being there made them feel awkward because I didn't like dancing. The more she spoke about that with her friends, the more the invented situation became worse and worse and worse, as opposed to just talking to me about the apparent mood that I was in and how I'm doing all of this to make other people feel bad. Right? You just constantly explore the nature, the real mechanical nuts and bolts of a situation without the emotional influence before putting it back on top. It is just this thing that keeps on going, that keeps on going, that keeps on going. And like in that moment, so let's say, for example, God forbid, your partner does cheat on you. Horrible situation to be in. It's awful. I've been there, right? Twice. You could say to yourself, what did I do to make this happen? Which most therapists would go, you can never make somebody cheat. They're going to do this and they're going to do this. Whatever happens, happens. It's a default in their character, not in yours. Okay. And this, I'll preface by saying, is just a personal opinion. It's a personal opinion on the nature of the reasoning practice here. My part in that I have to own for either not picking up on it sooner or not acknowledging the things that I picked up on that made me suspect that these other things were happening, that led towards this build up and in those particular moments. So as much as that situation is very much somebody taking the wheel in an arsehole kind of way, I can own some part of that. So it's not about me making them cheat. It is about me understanding why they cheated, which, if you can understand, is a very different question. Yeah, let's take another one from this. Uh, let's take a societal one. Let's have a look. Poverty and inequality. That's one that faces a lot of us. Poverty and inequality, especially in the UK now, with us being back in a recession. I think I'm, according to recent facts and statistics, I'm only like a few quid above above the poverty line myself, which is a unique challenge that's right there. But that's by the by. So this is what we got: the uneven distribution of wealth, resources, and how that creates significant hardships for many individuals and communities. Right. So we can look at that. Who creates the uneven distribution of wealth and resources? It's quite flippant to say, well, the government. As soon as you mention the government, people get triggered. People get triggered in that way. The question that pops up a lot of the time now is in current climates, we've got 14 years of the Tory party systematically fucking us as a country. Just it's hard not to acknowledge those facts, right? And again, it's something I've mentioned a couple of times. If you ask, all right, what were the benefits that we got out of Brexit? Oh, you're just a remoaner. You just like I didn't ask any of that. Just somebody tell me what the benefits were. They can't. This is an emotional quality. But the current thing that pops up a lot of the time is well, I'm going to vote Tory again because I don't trust Labour. Okay, based on what? They haven't been in power for 14 years, right? We have a proven track record of this company making mistakes, ruining it, and blaming other people, and a lack of responsibility. That's a proven track record that we've had for 14 years. But then the emotional qualities come in from that side. I think, well, people just then attack vote anyone else. Give them a chance. Right? If you don't trust Labour, that's fine. It's not just a two-party system. There are others. Go look at them for all. Give them a go. That's where if you look at this concept of the uneven distribution of wealth, this then has a tendency to get towards capitalist and socialist debates in that way. But we're really looking at solving poverty and inequality. Like if you look at some of the situations, um, I think it was to do with a process in America, and I would need to be fact checked on the exact statistics. This is just something I saw whilst I was scrolling through the news, so take that with whatever pinch of salt you want. The apparent figure to end homelessness was like maybe a few million or a billion over the amount that is being sent to like the war in Ukraine and the whole shitstorm of Israel and Palestine uh, at the minute. Why can't we solve homelessness? Right? Did Musk really need to buy Twitter? Couldn't he put 40 odd billion dollars, whatever it was, to better use? If he was that keen on giving it away anyway, couldn't he have done that? So then that raises questions about people's motivation, not just him. But like all of the people in positions of economic power, like we could come back to the prime minister at the minute, worth something silly like 700 million, 800 million, something like that. I don't know exactly. It's a lot of money. Um, and ask ourselves where his motivation is towards the distribution of wealth, given the facts that we know about his dealings. So it becomes about the motivation of the individual. How do we solve that? We solve that then by changing the motivation of the individual, by putting different individuals in charge. There's the solution. There's the solution there. It doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other of individuals. Anyone else. Anyone else that isn't within the party that's proven this thing happens over and over and over and over again. 14 years of information versus nothing from all of the other parties. I don't trust Labour. Fine. Don't trust for them. Don't vote for them. But voting for this other side is not a well reasoned debate. It's something that you're not applying any reasoning to. Right? If you have, and there is information that I don't know, I'd love to know. Right? Because it sounds like I'm calling out some kind of political debate in that moment. I'm just showing you the way that this reasoning chain can be applied to consistently give you fresh data to work with that is outside the influence of emotion. Right? One thing that I get a lot is because I wear lots of like loud, silly T-shirts and I'm covered in tattoos. People immediately develop an assumption about my competence within this kind of material, or my competence within my work role, because professionalism dictates in certain scenarios that I should be wearing a suit and be clean shaven, and my skin should not have any pretty pictures on. Okay, that's fine. All those opinions are cool that you can have, but you've got all of these opinions about an aesthetic nature. How does aesthetics translate to what happens up here? If you can tell me how that does, then we have more reason to bring to the debate, more critical thinking to bring to the debate. If all you're doing is bringing numbers on the back of it, numbers could tell you anything in that particular domain of aesthetics. You've just got to ask the right kind of people, right? When you see an article on some kind of news outlet, recent study finds, how many of you go and try and track down the study? Most people would likely be saying, well, I don't do that. I take some kind of a relaxed empirical approach towards finding this kind of information. If it's good enough for the news, that's fine. Most of the time, I'm saying most of the time with the articles that I've read in this scenario. So I don't know, over the last couple of months, maybe 20, if I were to hazard a guess. Hate that word, but I am basing it on nothing. So like I make it a habit to go through and I will find the study that it's connected to. Recent study finds that this causes this. Fair enough. Let's go and have a look at the numbers. And it's from a group where like 20 or 30 people have been spoken to. 20 or 30 people compared to the billions on the planet? No, no, no. Right? So for every ounce of a number that connects towards a stereotype, like not all blondes are thick. That's the easiest one that happens in that moment. Not all blondes are thick. Right? I know a perfectly good number of people who are thick that have no hair. Right? And this is the nature of what it is that we're seeing. So when we're reasoning out data, the tendency is to get confused almost around emotional qualities being antagonistic to clear reasoning. So let's remove all emotion. Well, we can't do that as human beings. Give or take a few situations and a few scenarios. What is a good idea is to move the qualities of emotion to one side for a moment, then look at the nuts and bolts, then have a look at how that's viewed through the lens of that particular emotion. Because then that gives you the information that's connected to the nuts and bolts, and it gives you the perceptual circumstances as well. So you're bringing twofold to apply to a situation that you can keep applying it to and keep applying it to and keep applying it to. Let's have a look at this one. Let's take another one. Physical health. From chronic illnesses to accidents and injuries, physical health concerns can significantly impact our lives. Of course they can. Of course they can. It's that classic line of Fat Bastard from the Austin Powers films. I eat because I'm unhappy, and I'm unhappy because I eat. I take a moment to just think about that. That's an awful situation to be in. Horrible. But with that presents an easy application to inquire about fixing it. Why are you unhappy in those moments, right? That's why we explore. We get happiness on track, and if you eat because you're unhappy and happy because you eat, one fixes the other in that moment. And if you look at like a physical health in terms of fitness, how about you look at the approaches that you can take? So, what do you want from physical health? Is it losing weight, or is it a specific skill, or is it a specific strength feat? Are you training for an Ironman? Whatever you're bringing to the table, then you look at the list of possible hindrances to that, right? The nuts and bolts. The nuts and bolts of it connect to feelings, and you can push them together to better understand. Because if somebody wants to do an Ironman, but I don't know, they have fibromyalgia, right? Horrible chronic illness. Then we have to work within their own expectations to maintain their mental health during the process. You have to work within their physical health to maintain their expectation, right? And what you're doing in those moments is just continually asking questions, putting emotions to one side temporarily. Temporarily. Because emotional qualities are antagonistic to clear reasoning, but the qualities of emotion are not. Is that some vain attempt to try and make a pithy catchphrase out of it? Maybe a little. But is it relevant? Absolutely. Because when we're dealing with human concerns, specifically within the realms of a Sherlockian moment, you can walk up to a scene and have the nuts and bolts, the mechanicry of this happened, that led to this, that led to this, that led to this, that led to this. When you start to ask the why it led to this, why this happened, and so on and so forth, when you're looking at a motivation for something, emotions influence decisions. Okay? So that's our brief little look at how it is that you can apply these methods to start being able to solve any and all problem. No one's saying to disregard the influences of emotion. We are just saying pop it to one side for a moment. Let's look at the actual details of the matter, and then let's bring emotion back into it to see how these elements connected together and the kind of information that it created on the top. All right, guys. So with that in mind, I'm going to love you and leave you. Make sure you stay tuned for the monograph's release very soon. Make sure you're clicking like and subscribe on the video itself, wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow along there too. It is a free source, a free avenue that you can tell how your system that you get your podcasts, what kind of podcasts you enjoy, and it's an easy way to help out creators like myself so we can do this for longer and bring you the kind of information that you want. So with that in mind, I'll see you next time. Take it easy. Have a good one.